Halloween. I bid you welcome. Please enjoy some trick or treats. I don't partake myself. I don't eat NECA wafers. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sanctum. Well, it's October again. As a matter of fact, it's the last day of October. Halloween! It snuck up on me. My favorite time of year, Halloween. I wish it could be October and Halloween all year long. Well, in a way, it always is Halloween in the Sanctum. Come in and celebrate Halloween with me, won't you? We're going to be taking a look at some cool vintage masks and costumes. And I suppose you've probably guessed who I'm going to be talking about tonight by taking a look at these masks here. Yes, we're going to be taking a look at that icon of horror and Halloween, Count Dracula. And we're not only going to look at Dracula, we're going to explore some of his vampiric minions as well. So grab that candy bowl and join me for a bite, won't you? As we lift the lid on some of these vintage vampiric costumes in a little episode I like to call the Dracula Dossiers. Now, of course, when you think of Dracula, you think of two things. You think of the novel by Bram Stoker, or you think of Bela Lugosi in the 1931 Universal Pictures film. The character of Dracula started off the entire Universal monster craze. And I'm going to be honest with you, Dracula has never been my favorite of the Universal monsters, nor my favorite of the Universal monster films. I love it. It's got great moments, and believe me, I love the character of Dracula. Out of all the monsters, Dracula is probably the one I least related to. He's an old count. He's an aristocrat. He's rich. He's debonair. He's sexy. Women swoon over him. I don't think that's a character that a lot of kids relate to. He's cool. Don't get me wrong. And I do love Dracula. And of course, being an icon of horror, Dracula was prime material during the Monster Kid craze for models, puzzles, action figures, and of course, Halloween costumes. It's getting late. We have to finish before dawn. So let's get started, shall we? Keep that crucifix close, and let's take a look at some of these vintage vampire costumes.
I'm a thirsty vampire. I want to bite your head. Shoot! I want to bite your head.
Now, the very first Dracula costume we're going to take a look at here is actually, I believe, one of the very first Dracula costumes that was made. Now, amongst members of the costume collecting community, there are rumors that there was in fact a Halco Dracula costume made in the early 60s. It would have predated this one here, and would have in fact been the first Universal Pictures Dracula costume. Some people claim to have even seen pictures of this costume, and that there is one rare collector that is holding on to the only copy of this costume, and he won't let anyone see it. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. Of course, these are just sort of urban legends and rumors passed along through the costume collecting community. And I think a lot of people think this because the Phantom of the Opera costume from Halco has a picture on it that is very clearly supposed to be Dracula. So the theory is that at one point they were getting ready to make a Dracula costume. For one reason or another, that they stopped, quite possibly having to do with the rights to Lugosi's likeness. But at this point, as far as I know, it's all speculation. I've never seen it. If it is out there, I would love to see it. So whoever this mysterious collector is who owns this, please, show it to us. Let us see it. Let it be known. Share. If I could turn back time. Was that a Cher imitation? This one came out in 1961. It appears in the Collegeville catalog at that time. And this box is a little worse for wear, but it is still a great box. And you've got that fantastic Collegeville font there on the side with the pumpkins saying sparkling, dazzling, fire bright flock, day glow colors, glitter. Now this box a little shaky, a little worse for wear here, but this is actually the Collegeville pumpkin box. It actually predates the Ben Cooper pumpkin box, which is well known and famous amongst costume collectors. But Collegeville did it first. And, you know, the cellophane is still on this, amazingly, the original cellophane. The box around it is just falling to pieces. Now, believe it or not, Collegeville and Halco made costumes before Ben Cooper. They precede Ben Cooper in the costume business. Ben Cooper gets all the love, but Halco and Collegeville made some pretty amazing costumes themselves. And of course, I love these graphics here. The witch on the broom, the devil with the pitchfork, the mid-century modern spaceman on the rocket ship, and of course, a juggling clown. And we are looking at, this costume is actually marked Dracula. It's a small 34 to 36 for an adult. So it's for a small adult. And it was sold for, I believe that says, let's say $129 possibly. Love that font. Love that. I mean, look at this great old pumpkin orange here with these black letters, Halloween costume by Collegeville, made in the USA, Dracula inside a pumpkin. I mean, nothing says Halloween like this. They just don't design things like this anymore. I already took the costume out of the box because it's so fragile, and I was getting it ready to film here, and I just wanted to showcase the box. It was kind of hard to showcase the box with the costume in it. There's a better view of the box itself. It's not standing up quite well. There's the outline of the pumpkin. It's not as prominent here because this side of the box is missing, but it's quite clearly a pumpkin box. And here we've actually got the full side of the box here. Dracula, Halloween costume. Now, I believe this is probably right around the first issue of this costume due to the age of the box and due to the costume itself. And it took some doing hanging this up, but here is the smock in all its gory glory. That is absolutely beautiful. This is why I love these. And I never even really knew this existed. I just happened to come across it one day. And this is a piece that doesn't come up quite often. I don't like to use the word rare. I probably want to say more uncommon, because as soon as I say something's rare, like 100 of them show up. And I don't buy things because they're rare. I'm not one of those collectors that only wants rare pieces in his collection. It's nice to find a rare piece, but I buy things because I have a connection to them. There's something about the artwork on the piece that I enjoy, or the history of the piece, or what have you. And some of these early Collegeville pieces are really amazing works of art. There are some fantastic illustrations on some of these early Collegeville smocks. Now, I know a lot of people comment about the artwork on the smocks, and it's a big joke as for, well, I'm Dracula and I'm wearing a picture of Dracula on the smock. But looking at these now, these are works of art. These are beautiful. These are fantastic early Monster Kid era illustrations. And of course, this is sort of playing into that juxtaposition that was going on in the early 60s, in the early stages of the monster craze, with this mixture between humor and horror. I mean, that's what a lot of these monster hosts were doing that hosted a lot of these early shock theater package films. You had people like Ghoulardi, the original Svengoolie, Zachary. They were all showing these films with a sort of wink and a nod, tossing out this Mad Magazine-style humor. And of course, a lot of the products that were geared towards monster kids reflected that. You had things along the lines of the You'll Die Laughing trading cards, goofy monster models, and of course, costumes like this. And that's why I love this piece so much, because it really captures that early feel of Monster Kid fandom. And clearly you can see what I'm talking about just by looking at this illustration here. This is a perfect example of early Monster Kid pop art. You've got Dracula boldly drawn in these white lines, with the black of the costume serving as the color for his tuxedo and his cape. And then you've got these gory, bright, blood red highlights. Dracula's hair with the widow's peak and those two little points coming up on the side of his head like devil horns, his bushy eyebrows, the red part of his inner pointy ears, his mouth open, his fangs bared, blood dripping down his chin, his gnarled fingers with bloody fingernails, as he's approaching us and asking us, how about a few drops between friends? And the word drops, of course, is dripping blood. Why, it's a perfect goulash of horror and humor. Got a vampire bat flying over his shoulder there. Then we scoot down a little bit here, and he's got these great cartoonish legs. And this is a costume. It's not a traditional smock. It's got long arms, full sleeves, but it has no legs. It's more like a monk's robe or a dress of some sort. And you've got this great illustration on the bottom here. You've got Dracula's coffin with the lid open, and on top of the lid is this bottle of wine and this wine glass that has either red wine in it or most likely blood. Because if you know Dracula, you know he doesn't drink wine.
Was that supposed to be Bela Lugosi?
Well, at least it's better than your Vincent Price imitation. Anywho. The coffin is coming out of the earth here, and you've got the felt lining of the coffin is blood red as well. Really fantastic illustration. They threw a lot of work into this smock, putting that on that. The more I think of it, though, looking at this, it did say this was an adult-sized costume. So I wonder if this is supposed to be one of those sort of goofy costumes for adults to wear to an adult Halloween party. You know, a Mad Men-style Halloween party back then, knocking back martinis, smoking cigarettes one after the other. You're sashaying around in this Dracula robe and, you know, sticking out your chest so you can read this thing that says, "How about a few drops between friends?" Kind of double entendre. Reminds me a lot of like, I remember one time when I was a kid, my dad had these napkins in the back of our, like, I guess you'd call it the cocktail closet. It was where all the makings of cocktail mixes were and alcohol and stuff like that. But down below, my mom would always throw our toys. You know, when she was cleaning up, she'd just throw them in there in the kitchen closet. And one time I'm in there looking around, and I find this box of napkins, and they're called Nudekins. And you can imagine what they were. They were cartoons, though, and they were just cartoons of, like, nude people telling cheeky jokes. Very innocent in this day and age. More of an innocent kind of risque, I guess, if you will. And this costume kind of gives off that vibe a little bit if you look at it as this is a costume for adults. But, of course, it's nothing like the adult costumes nowadays. If you walk into Spirit or look at some of them online where some dude's walking around with just a sheep on his crotch or is wandering around as a male genitalia. Did I hear you mention male genitalia? That is one of my absolutely favorite Italian restaurants. You know I'm a gourmand, and they have the most amazing meatballs. There's your risque humor.
Wait, what's that Jody's wearing? That's not an ostrich costume, you fool!
Now I know you're all anxiously awaiting seeing the mask that actually goes to this costume. But believe it or not, this is not the mask you think it would be. And here it is. Yes, this is the mask for the Collegeville Dracula costume. Now, it's vampiric looking, sure enough, but it certainly does not look like what we typically think of as Dracula, or even a vampire for that matter. This is more a vampire transitioning from some type of creature-like form from either a bat or a cat or a wolf into a vampire. So it's kind of cool that one of the very early versions of a Dracula costume had Dracula as a creature of the night and not just a gentleman with a widow's peak and a Victorian complexion. Now, I'm pontificating here, and I know, of course, that the reasoning behind this had nothing to do with the liberties that the artists were taking on the character of Dracula. This just happened to be the mask that Collegeville had handy and said, hey, let's make this our Dracula mask. It's kind of interesting because the Dracula on the smock does look like what we typically think of as a vampire or Dracula. Like I said, the widow's peak, the the long fingernails, the blood dripping from his mouth. But this is what they went with for the Dracula mask. A lot of the costume designers, for some reason, when they went with these vampire type characters, to indicate that it was a vampire, would put some type of bat theme on the costume itself, some even on the mask. And of course, we've got the bat wings here, indicating it's sort of like a vampire bat type creature. And we're going to see that occur again on some other masks that we're going to see here later on. It does have fangs, which Ben Cooper's did not. And of course, it's got these bat wings coming out here like whiskers. It does have a widow's peak. I guess you could consider that a widow's peak. I love the paint job on this. Just the greenish paint, the neon yellow. Look at just the paint strokes there of white in the widow's peak itself. Got the cat-like eyes. No blood dripping from the mouth, although you could take it that these lips seem like blood. Reddish feral nose. Love the red in the ears there, the pointed ears, of course. And you know that this is an older mask, an older Collegeville mask. The vinyl is much softer, much more fragile, very delicate. I always love it when I come across masks like these. I mean, I hate having to store them and take care of them because they're very, like I said, they're very fragile. And this one, of course, does have a crack here. Now, I know you're probably looking at this mask and saying to yourself, are you sure that's what they made for a Dracula costume? Well, I did my research, and like I said, I found this costume first appearing in the 1961 Collegeville catalog. There it is there. And as you can see, that is indeed the mask. And of course, Collegeville would repurpose or reuse this mask for a variety of characters. It appears to be like it's a black cat. It also appears to be like a bat. They would also use it as a variety of different monster type masks. And here they are paired together. Like I said, as far as I can tell, this is probably one of the earliest representations of an actual Dracula costume. I'm sure there are some others out there. And again, there are the rumors of those Halco costumes, and some people claim to have seen them, much like some people claim to have seen that very rare Jerry Lewis film, The Day the Clown Cried. And if you were ever to see that costume, it would be called The Day the Dracula Cried.
Jody, why are you still wearing that, for God's sakes? You're not an ostrich. I know it has a long neck, but does an ostrich head look like that? Take it off.
Now, this is Belfrey the Bat. He's not exactly a Dracula costume, but I figure he fits into this genre per se. We're talking about vampiric creatures of the night, along with knockoff Draculas with bat-like masks, then he does need to be included. I'm also including this costume because it also came out in 1961. Earliest appearance I can find of it is in the Ben Cooper 1961 catalog, here where they advertise the glitter glow process. And this costume would run for quite a few years. And here it is in one of the very early boxes. Again, they're advertising that glitter glow, and it's new at this point in time. It just came out, new glitter glow. And you can see it's sort of got the trademark there that Ben Cooper had actually trademarked the glitter glow phrase. And kind of an interesting box, more of a generic black masquerade box, but it still has those Halloween colors, sort of spooky yellows and ghostly pumpkin orange. And I love this sort of festive bubbles or circles here on the side. And that right there, man, that is about as Mad Men styling font as it gets by Ben Cooper. Mask in dazzle colors, costume clear. This box is actually in pretty good condition. There's a little bit of a tear here, but it is in very, very nice condition considering its age. And look at all those beautiful graphics on there. And here we have, of course, some precious, precious patina. This was sold at Save on Drugs for $1.98. Trying to see if I can see the, sometimes you can see the date on there, but I can't. And Belfrey the Bat, it's a large. Also stamped $1.98 there. So suggested retail price was just under $2 for these. There we got some interesting stuff here. Glitter Glow costume by Ben Cooper. Costume decorated with glitter, durable vinyl mask in brilliant, dazzling colors. Flame retardant, authentically styled, correctly sized. Safety stitch sewing for longer wear. Ben Cooper, Brooklyn, New York. Safety stitch sewing for longer wear? Did I read that right? If anyone has ever worn one of these, you know they come apart like rice paper. They rip at the drop of a hat. 90% of these costumes that I have that I've bought have some type of tear or rip in them. So I don't know what that is they were advertising. Now I've got the smock stored separately in a garment bag because it's not in the best condition, and I just wanted to keep the mask and box sort of safe. Look at this mask. This box is beautiful. It's got all the cellophane on it. But here is the mask, and what a colorful, fantastic Halloween mask this is. What I find kind of interesting about this is they have this sort of bat symbol up there on the top of Belfrey's head, which is very reminiscent of Batman. And again, they're probably trying to pay homage to the Batman-like character, although this is a few years before the 66 Batman. We're talking, like I said, 1961, so we're very early in the 60s here. But look at that. You've got that great yellow paint around the eyes there with the white circles underneath. With just a highlight white dot there. And of course, he's got his mouth open in a chuckle, a laugh, or a vicious attack mode. His tongue hanging out there. The paintwork on these never ceases to amaze me. I mean, they just really is amazing. For such a simple item, it brings me so much joy taking a look at these. He's got sort of his bat wings flying out here from his neck. A little bit of a bat goatee underneath his chin there. Really nice mask, really wide mask. Fun, cartoonish. Surprised they never made this into a cartoon character. And again, you can tell it's one of the older ones because you've got the black string here instead of the rubber band, and the vinyl is less finished on the back here. As you get newer, you'll see the vinyl's more glossy, smooth on the back. This is still, it's a very smooth vinyl. It's very soft, almost like paper. Now, since we're looking at Belfry masks, I do have another one here that I picked up in a mask lot. It's a variant. It's a different paint scheme. And as a matter of fact, looking at the catalog pages now, it looks like this may have been the one that was included in the box. I wonder if they did include two different ones, but this is a very cool paint scheme. And I know it's odd to own two of the same mask, but when they have variants like this, much like the AHI monsters or other toys, I get this sort of OCD kicking in where I just have to own every variant. And I mean, you can see why, because look how different this is. You've got kind of orange around the eyes here, orange in the ears. Still got that bat symbol, a little bit different color there, more of a lighter blue. He's got more of a flesh tone on him. Still an old mask. It's got that paper-like quality to it, and somebody put this old string on here because the rubber band disappeared. But look at the two of them there together, and same masks, but completely different vibe from each one. Matter of fact, the one on the right there with the orange eyes has more of a Halloween quality to it, I think, especially with that pumpkin orange around the eyes and in the ears. Although I do like the funhouse styling of the one that was in the box with sort of the neon eyes and the bright blue there. That definitely has a very cool cartoonish quality. Now here is the Belfrey the Bat smock. It's a little worse for wear, which is unusual for a Ben Cooper costume. Usually I find the Collegevilles fall apart a lot easier than the Ben Cooper ones do, but this one does date all the way back to 1961. And it is, like I said, worse for wear. Surprisingly enough, the glitter glow on it is very vibrant, very nice. But here it is here. If you spread the wings, you can see, I can see how the wings are tattered here. Piece already fell off over there, but that's what it would look like if you were a kid inside this and you spread your arms out. It looks exactly like a flying bat. I love that illustration. And of course, this is all done in silver sparkles. It's a time when they made the smocks a little bit different too, incorporated them more as part of the costume. What's interesting here is that they're not your standard sleeves. They're these sleeves that go out like the bat wings there. Wish it was in a little bit better condition, but it is what it is. Oh, there goes another piece. All right, so I couldn't really hang that up much longer. Here's a bit better look at it here. You can kind of see more of the sparkles from the glitter glow. This, again, precedes the Universal monsters that Ben Cooper will do in just a few years. And this will still be part of that line. As a matter of fact, there is one of the early Ben Cooper commercials where they advertise some of the monsters, and they advertise the Munsters and the Addams Family, and Belfrey the Bat.
Come with me to the scariest place in the world. Ben Cooper's Halloween Cave of Horrors. Home of every weird monster costume you can think of. Look, there's Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy. There are the Munsters, Herman and Lily, and Morticia and Lurch from the Addams Family. All exclusive Ben Cooper costumes. You can be a hairy, scary monster too, like Wolfman, Belfrey the Bat, Caveman. Their masks are covered with weird-looking hair, just like real monsters. And for girls who want to be beautiful, Ben Cooper has just the costume for you, all with glamorous, real-looking hair. This Halloween, remember, Ben Cooper has the best Halloween costumes, and your store has them now. Get your Ben Cooper costume today.
Now, of course, in 1963, Ben Cooper got into the game of producing the Universal monsters. And of course, they had a Dracula in their line. And this here, of course, is from that classic pumpkin box run, circa 1963. The pumpkin box Ben Cooper Dracula. Now, this box is actually in pretty decent condition. The cellophane is punched out here a little bit. You've got that pumpkin orange and gold confetti, the classic Ben Cooper logo there. Masquerade costume, spooky with ventilated mask. And of course, I always like these boxes because the mask is poking out of the top of the jack-o'-lantern there. And this one is particularly terrifying with this Dracula mask. Ben Cooper. Looks like this was sold for $1.99. One only. Dracula. There's a medium. If you watch my episodes, what is the most common size of costumes that I come across? Medium. UP Company, Universal Pictures. Again, I always love just showing off all the graphics on the box here. They're just beautiful. Ben Cooper costumes, put safety first. They really don't make costumes like these anymore. Take that out. And here is our Dracula mask. Now this one still has the the black string intact, and like I said, it's older. You can tell by the quality of the vinyl on the mask. His chin's kind of dented in a little bit there, but that's fine. And what I always thought was interesting about the Dracula mask is he doesn't really have fangs. He just has teeth. His mouth is open up. He's almost like a ghoul. But he does have the blood dripping down his chin there. He's got the upturned nose, more so like the Phantom of the Opera. And I love the eyes on this, the way the paint job on the eyes, where they really gave him sort of this bloodshot eye look. They didn't just keep the eyes an eye hole. And on the Dracula mask in particular, the eye holes are always these super round eyes, where they're not necessarily that on some of the other, they're more cat's eyes on some of the other costumes, some of the other masks, I mean. And I don't know what this is supposed to entail, but you'll see this on the Dracula masks, this sort of horns up above his eyebrows. He's got that great widow's peak. And of course, look at the coloring, the paint inside the hair there. Hints of burnt sienna, a little midnight blue, black. Beautiful, beautiful paint job. And I mean, look at this right here. Like, just look at this work on his forehead here, whatever those lines are supposed to be. Interesting mask. Again, it's doesn't really, it's a bit reminiscent of Dracula. It's more like a ghoul to me, or a Phantom of the Opera type creature. But that was what they went with for Dracula. Again, I think people did not want to mess around with the Lugosi estate. You'll notice, as we've talked about before, that the majority of toys made in the 60s and the 70s did not carry the Bela Lugosi style Dracula. They always kind of went for more of a generic guy with a widow's peak. But this is certainly one of the creepier Draculas. And I just love bringing these out to look at. That's why I love doing these episodes, because I don't get to see these. A lot of times they're in a closet, or they're hidden away, or I've got them in storage. And they are a pain in the ass to store. So it's nice around this Halloween time of year to bring them out and get me in a spooky mood. Now this smock is actually in pretty good condition. Well, maybe not. Maybe I spoke too soon. It feels very supple. But this is the yellow design smock, which is an early design. There's another design that's a little bit rarer, another variation, where this is all in white. Let's see if we can take a look at this without damaging it too much. Now this one is actually in very nice condition. It's, again, the yellow design. There was one with a white design rather than the yellow here. You've got the UP company logo there along his vest. And you've got this fantastic illustration of Dracula there in the corner. And that is a beautiful illustration of Dracula. I don't know who did some of this early artwork on these costumes. I know Frank Romano did a lot. I don't know if he was particularly responsible for this one. You've got the buttons on his cummerbund there sort of being these tiny little skulls. And again, this one is cracked right in the middle there, like somebody tried to drive a stake through Dracula's heart. That's where his pendant would be, and it's right underneath his bow tie there. And a lot of times that happens, especially with these, especially with the designs. The paint or the material they use to make the designs gets a little brittle, and that is where it was folded, and over the years that just starts to sort of break away. And then, of course, on the other breast, we've got this big bat with Dracula shining out there. The Dracula on the costume does appear a tad Lugosi-like to me. But one thing I did notice is this Dracula clearly has fangs, which the mask does not. And you can see a little drop of blood coming out from Dracula's chin there as well. Let me see if I can pull this open a little bit so you can actually see the rest of the costume. Dracula. Never went out as Dracula in a boxed costume. I did dress up as Dracula one year with makeup and a cape and a vest, what have you. But never went for the Dracula in the Ben Cooper box costume. And here he is, of course, with the mask. That is a really cool looking combination. I have to say the mask works with the costume. Was never really a big fan of this Dracula mask growing up, just because, again, it didn't have the fangs. But now I really dig the spooky retro Monster Kid feel that this mask has. As I get older, I begin to enjoy the liberties that a lot of people took designing these things. Whereas a kid, I was more of a purist and I wanted it to be exactly like the movie. So if it wasn't like that, or if it wasn't a comic book type aesthetic or something that I enjoyed, I kind of was turned away from it. But now, I love this. This is awesome. I bought this a few years ago online, and the reason I bought it was because I thought it had this really cool box. And you can see it's got this fantastic Halloween box that says, glow-in-the-dark mask, Halloween. It's got this Halloween-style confetti, black and orange on there. And I had never seen this box at that time. Lo and behold, when I get the costume and it shows up, it's a Bland Sharness mummy box. Now, Bland Sharness was another costume company that made a variety of different costumes in the 50s, 60s, and onward. And they made some really cool, interesting costumes as well. And we'll be taking a look at those in some later episodes, possibly in this one also. But this is clearly a Ben Cooper Dracula costume. And I just wanted to showcase this one a bit because it's got a smock that's in a bit nicer condition than the last one. And the mask has a slight variation on it from the one we just took a look at. Also, while we're on it, I did want to point out that wonderful patina. This costume would have been sold at Caldor for $1.39. And it's a little worse for wear there, not awful. What I noticed was the pattern, the paint pattern on the eyes, the bloodshot eyes was a little bit different. I really love the paint job on these. This is like something, I always call it sort of like a funhouse style paint, like that neon style. When you go into, Dark Ride Dracula would know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's a channel you should check out. They also collect costumes and Halloween masks, etc. But, if you go on one of those old haunted house rides, a lot of the mannequins in there, monsters in there would have this glow paint on them to shine in under a black light. And again, we've got these triangles up above the eyebrows, really deep furrowed brow, that upturned phantom nose, and then the teeth. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that this Dracula doesn't have fangs. But, of course, Dracula himself, as played by Bela Lugosi, didn't have fangs either. That may have very well been what they were thinking when they put this mask together. There's a famous scene in Dracula where Dracula opens up his mouth, and, of course, there are no fangs. But the prominent teeth is always pretty creepy. And I actually really like this Dracula mask. For the longest time, it really didn't do anything for me because it didn't really look like Dracula. It didn't look like Bela Lugosi. It didn't really look like a vampire. Like I said, it looks more like a madman or a ghoul. But now I can kind of see it, and, I really enjoy it. Love the paint job and the hair and the widow's peak there. I tell you, I really can't get enough of these beautiful Ben Cooper costumes. And now this smock is in a lot nicer condition, unlike my dry hands. And this is a really vibrant, bright costume. I suppose because they're making Dracula and Dracula is all black. For safety purposes, they said, we really got to put a lot of color onto this thing because there's more color on this costume than say the Wolfman or Frankenstein. You've got these big yellow starburst patterns behind Dracula's head and behind the Dracula font and the vampire bat. Again, I just want to point out those awesome skull buttons, and this one's in much better condition. You can see the cummerbund and the shirt there, and of course Dracula's pendant with the big D on the circle. And as all well-dressed vampires are, he's got his little bow tie there. What's a cravat? Is that a cravat? Would you call that a cravat? Does anyone know what a cravat is?
Of course I know what a cravat is. I've got a closet full of them, one for every day of the week and holidays. I was not only known as the master of the macabre, but also the master of fashion. You Philistine, summoned me from beyond the grave to hang out in your room of records and knickknacks, and you don't know what a cravat is?
And there, of course, is our well-dressed Dracula. It's a pretty cool costume, actually. Now, here's a couple of more Dracula masks that I picked up along the way. Again, I just wanted to showcase them here because of the different styles and variations of them. These quite possibly were rack masks. They could have come with costumes. I got them in a lot of masks, so I'm not quite sure what they go to. And again, Ben Cooper mix and matched a lot. A lot of times mothers would put away these costumes and throw one mask in with a different smock, and so it's kind of hard to track down the timeline or what masks went with what costumes for a variety of reasons. But this is more of the standard one here. The Ghoul Lugosi. He's got the maroon reddish highlights in his hair. This one's in really nice shape. It's painted really well. Again, he's got the blood coming out of his mouth. Really highlight the teeth there, the lines along the teeth. Again, they kind of go with a Phantom of the Opera type look with his nose here. It's almost like that's what they were going off of. It's kind of looks a little like the Phantom of the Opera face from the Aurora model kit, doesn't it? And I often wonder if the reason they have him opening his mouth like this, I think as I've already said, is because in Dracula you do see Lugosi sort of open his mouth and there's no fangs. This one I like. It's a little bit more oval shaped face. And he's got the reddish highlights in his hair, but he's also got this sort of midnight blue, this bluish gray highlight. I don't know what he's got going on his forehead here. Some Charles Manson-esque carvings, perhaps. And then he's got these really sort of witch's hat peaks over his eyes. Big bushy brow. You can see the brows are different here. This one's got, a little bit more real bushy, thick brows. This one's a little bit different, but I suppose it's due to the shape of their heads as well. And some different coloring in the bloodshot of the eyes there, a little bit darker. He's got these lashes coming out this way. Got the ears up here. He doesn't really have the sideburns. And of course that terrifying, ghastly, gaping mouth with the blood dripping down. You really can notice the difference here between the two. Paint jobs on the eyes. And this guy's got gray lips. This guy's got the neon lips. Now this one is definitely probably a rack mask. It's got the 29-cent Cooper stamp on the back there. Again, somebody stapled a rubber band onto the back of this fellow's head. And this one might be, well, no, it's still that thin paper. But what's interesting here is he's also a 29-cent rack mask, and it says 29 cents Ben Cooper, made in the USA. And he was a little cracked here, and somebody repaired him with, looks like Scotch tape, and actually isn't doing that bad a job. Might be something I have to take a look at for some of my other ones that are cracked. I certainly don't mind restoration. This isn't, revolutionary colonial era furniture a la the Antiques Roadshow. I'm not beyond putting a little tape on these to protect from cracks, little glue, what have you. Now that's a lot of Draculas. As a matter of fact, this is a Dracula meets a Dracula, or a Dracula meets a Dracula. Say how do you do and shake hands and state your name and business. Dracula. Too many Dracs on the dance floor. Now here's sort of a knockoff style Dracula. Sometimes I prefer these costumes that aren't quite Dracula. They're sort of a knockoff version of Dracula, or maybe more of a generic vampire or an original vampire type character. We saw something similar when we took a look at the Frankenstein costumes a few years ago in my Frankenstein episode, where you had the Frankenstein monster costume, but then there were a variety of knockoff Frankensteins like the Brute and Monstro. And what we have here is a character called the Bat. So we're back at that bat theme again, like the 1961 Collegeville Dracula. And this is a recurring theme we're going to see throughout the 60s and 70s on a variety of Dracula-inspired and vampiric costumes. Now, despite what that box says, this is in fact a Ben Cooper costume. Grant Hogg's was a chain of department stores along the lines of your Woolworths, Ben Franklin, or Five and Dime. Now, supposedly it started in Lynn, Massachusetts, but I don't recall ever seeing any Grant Hogg's department stores in my area. And this would be what you call a Ben Cooper variant box. It was a box made specifically for Grant Hogg's department stores, a Grant Hogg's exclusive. Ben Cooper would do this with a variety of other department stores, Woolworths probably being the most famous. And that is one of the reasons that I bought this costume. Not only is it a super cool costume, but I really dig this Grant Hogg's exclusive box. And you can't convince me I was wrong to buy it. I mean, look at the beautiful graphics on this box. It screams mid-century modern to me. Now, I know that may not be an appropriate usage of the term, but I refer to everything sort of from that period of the 50s up through the 60s as mid-century modern. I mean, look at that font. That's a mid-century modern font. It's got black letters. It's got orange letters. Grant Hogg's Halloween costume, a little half moon there, silver moon. Well, not silver moon. It's an orange moon, but I call it a silver moon when it's like that. And just the drawings, the illustrations on the box, the scarecrows with the jack-o'-lantern heads and the witches' hats. Grant Hogg's Halloween costume, $1.59, complete with mask. I mean, I just love the colors they chose on this. The Bat, medium, 8 to 10. Apparently the 60s was filled with medium-sized children. Satisfaction guaranteed, W.T. Grant Company. I wonder if anyone was never satisfied with this costume. I wear your costume, and I did not turn into a bat, nor did I feel like a bat. Although I do believe I may have contracted rabies. Flame retardant, authentically styled, correctly sized, safety stitch sewing, which we all know is bullshit. And again, look at that. It's sort of this ghoulish, greenish, bluish jack-o'-lantern colors there. I love the colors they chose for this. Really, really fantastic artwork. I say it all the time, but just the layouts, the fonts, the illustrations, the work that went into these boxes. The boxes were almost as fun as the toys themselves, or as the costumes themselves. When you're a kid, you would pore over this stuff, looking at it, and that's why you'd save the boxes. Look at the side there. Got a little rip here. But beautiful, beautiful, beautiful artwork. Now, I'm dating this one around, let's say, 1966. It appears on the 66 cover of the Ben Cooper catalog. And some pictures I found in costume parades show him marching along with Flipper the Dolphin, which was also released in 1966. Grant Togg's department store went out of business in 1976. Now, this could have been released somewhere between then, but with this black string rubber band and the style of the vinyl on the back of the mask here, I'm probably placing this mid to late 60s. But this is a really cool mask. And of course, we've got those fangs. We've got fangs in this. We finally have a Dracula with fangs, or a vampire with fangs. Now, I know they're trying to say that this is a bat, or the bat, which is some sort of weird half-man, half-bat, but that's what a vampire is, isn't it? And I like the fact that he's bald. My guess is they kind of repurposed perhaps an Uncle Fester mask. Love the ghoulish, yellowish green color. And of course the neon lips. These things look fantastic under a black light. Maybe I'll put some of these under a black light a little bit later in the episode. And where his eyes should be, there is this bat on his face. Now, I don't know whether this bat is a mask or this is a live bat that is stuck to his face and he has ripped holes through this poor creature's wings so that he can see. But it's a terrifying visage. And the baldness, the fact that they made it a bald vampire makes it all the more creepy. And I'm almost going to say, I wonder if the designer of this mask or the designer of this costume wasn't inspired by that fantastic vampire from the Silent Age, Nosferatu. Nosferatu. Demi Lovato. Great mask. And yeah, it's definitely an older costume. I can tell by the way the vinyl feels on the vinyl. I can tell by the way the rayon feels on this. And we've got the old trope there of the character being on the smock itself. There is the bat. Costume's not in that bad a condition. It's very, very dry, very crispy, wrinkled, of course, but overall not too bad. Now, what's kind of interesting here on the character is he's got this face. He's clearly looks like he is almost a superhero because he's got his name on his chest there that says Bat. He's got these armbands here, and it looks like he's got a cape instead of wings. And he's got a belt with a B on it, and he's clearly wearing like superhero underwear. But then he's clearly some type of creature if you look at his feet and his legs here. So after recording that little piece there, I started thinking about this, and I looked into it a little bit further. And now I am beginning to think that, yes, these types of costumes, this one in particular, was inspired by a few different things. One being that yes, there was, in fact, a pulp fiction hero called the Bat. And he appeared in thrilling publications' Black Book Detective. Now, the Black Bat was a pulp fiction hero along the lines of the Shadow or the Phantom or what have you. And he was a former district attorney who was disfigured and blinded by acid. So he takes on the mantle of the Bat. And he has powers not unlike Daredevil, where he is able to sense things. He has radar sense of a bat. And when he kills people, he leaves a little bat calling card on their body in the shape of a bat to let people know that it was the Bat that did this. He is trying to strike fear into the hearts of men. Now, Batman and the Bat came out right around the same time, and I believe they had some type of deal where the Black Bat would stay in the pulp magazines and Batman would be in comic books, and never the two twains should meet, so there weren't any lawsuits involved or anything along those lines. But what I did find very interesting when I was researching this a little bit is back in 1926, there was another character called the Bat, or there was a film called The Bat. It sort of set the precedent or the template for these sort of mysterious haunted house mansion movies. Agatha Christie type mysteries or the Cat and the Canary type thing. And in that film, there is a character who dresses up like a bat trying to solve these mysteries. Another interesting thing is that movie was remade in 1959 with our very own friend of the Sanctum, Vincent Price.
How have you never known this? That is one of the most prominent pictures of me on the interwebs. When you Google Vincent Price, that's the #1 photo that comes up. Well, that and for some reason a picture of me with mildew spray. God, I needed so much money in the 70s.
Now, the Bat character clearly predates Batman and certainly may have served as an inspiration for the Batman character. And that film, like I said, was remade in 1959. It also was remade for television in 1960. And there is a character that appears like a bat in that as well. So it's very possible that these designers and people making these costumes at Ben Cooper had grown up during that era and they had fond memories of the pulp magazine hero, or having seen that silent film in 1926, or perhaps even having seen that television program 6 short years ago, or even Vincent Price's film in 1959, and sort of tossed together an amalgamation of a bat-like character, especially because Batman was becoming very popular at this time. And one thing that is also in the 1966 catalog, besides the mask of this character on the cover, is the announcement that Ben Cooper has secured the license to the Batman franchise. So possibly what happened and why you have this with both teams is they have this stuff together, they might as well release it anyways. There's going to be a very similar thing with the Spider and Spider-Man type costumes. And that is going to be an episode all its own. So, as I just discussed, there may be a possibility that the reason behind all of these bat-like costumes was that these designers were inspired by a lot of these pulp heroes. The pulp heroes and the serials and by serials I mean the old serial movies, the old movies were having a resurgence in the early 60s here. As a matter of fact, that is one of the reasons why the Batman television series got greenlit, was because Hugh Hefner, of all people, used to play a lot of these old pulp movies and serial movies and silent films at his mansion or apartment or wherever he was at that particular time. And people really started getting into these. And so the guy that created Batman thought, well, maybe there's a market for this. And sure enough, there was. And Ben Cooper seemed to be a little bit ahead of the curve here by doing some of these pulp fiction heroes. So, like I said, I think this character is an amalgamation of a horror character cashing in on the horror kid craze and at the same time trying to cash in on the superhero craze. Now, the mask is very interesting. I did mention up front that I think it kind of looks like Nosferatu, where he's got the bald head. But one other thing I noticed, I'm looking at this mask and I'm thinking, I've seen this somewhere before. I've seen something similar like this before. And of course, there's this very famous picture here. I don't know, you've probably seen it before. It's on a lot of advertisements. It's shown up as reproduction prints, but this is a picture that was used to advertise the play Dracula back in the 20s, I believe. And it was the playbill or the poster to advertise the play at certain theaters. And to me, it kind of looks like this mask. It's not out of the realm of possibilities that some guy at Ben Cooper remembered seeing the Dracula play back in the 20s and kind of had a vague memory of this. And what's even more interesting is one of the blurbs here on the poster says, "It's better than the Bat." So, what more proof do you need that these two are an amalgamation of that pulp hero, the Bat, and Dracula? These are all just theories. These are all just possibilities. I mean, I'm I'm just speculating about a hypothesis. Take a closer look at the smock here. So you've got this pattern behind it that it's like the fur of a bat. So clearly the torso is supposed to be the bat's body, but on it you have an illustration of the character itself. And this is a full illustration. It's the bat crouching, ready to pounce, ready to go fight crime or grab someone and suck their blood. But what I find hilarious about this is the bat that is on this guy's face. I want everyone to take a look at the bat on this character's face. For the purposes of this illustration, that bat is clearly supposed to be real. And for the life of me, I can't make out what that look is on the bat's face. Is it fear? Is it despondent? Is it just indifferent? Is it into this? So this guy's running around, fighting crime, with a live bat on his face. Hold it right there, Maroni.
Oh, Christ, it's the bat!
That's right. And your days of committing crime in urban town are over. Now surrender peacefully, or I'll suck your blood.
Wait, oh dear God. Wait, what's that on your face? Is that a live bat? You know it's eating moths right now, right?
You see, I absorb his bat powers by wearing him on my face. And every once in a while, like an ordinary bat, he does need to eat moths and mosquitoes. Does keep the pests away.
Kill me.
Sinon, je montre des dents.
Now, as we take our first step into the 70s here, we're going to be taking a look at a bland Sharness costume. And again, we're looking at that bat-like theme. And during the 70s, we're going to be seeing a lot more vampiric characters. And what I will note about some of these vampires in the 70s is they begin to get a lot more horrific. This one was made by Bland Sharness, as I stated. Bland Sharness did that mummy box that that mysterious Dracula costume appeared in. And you would think this might be called the Bat, but Bland Sharness actually goes ahead and calls this character Dracula. Yes, they actually go ahead and call this guy Dracula. Now, I initially thought when I got this that this was probably late 60s, early 70s. It may even have been a costume that was around in the late 60s. Interesting thing you find out when you start collecting costumes and looking into this is how many of these costume companies sort of swapped masks or used molds, I guess, to make the vacuum form masks, swapped costumes, etc. Bland Sharness was out of Brooklyn, New York, like Ben Cooper. Ben Cooper, Bland Sharness, Bayshore, they were all out of the New York area. Halco and Collegeville were out of Pennsylvania. And you have a few other companies scattered throughout the United States as well. But these were some of the bigger companies back then. Up there it is, 1972. So I was right, this is early 70s. 1972, Family State Easy Stores. And a great box. Look at this Halloween goodness here. Got an owl and a witch, a happy little witch with a wart on her chin. And she's saying this comes with a glow mask. And up at the top of the box, we've got our black cats and our orange jack-o'-lantern with all these decorative graphics and colors along the window frame of the box. And of course, the cellophane is long gone. Got the Bland Sharness logo there, which is a witch on a broom, and it incorporates the B from Bland and the C from Sharness to make a witch with a extremely large belly, or perhaps that's the moon she is flying across, or a jack-o'-lantern, what have you. Fantastic graphics. I love these simple, cool, cartoonish graphics that they put on things back in the 60s and 70s. Love the colors on this. You've got your ghoulish green, your pumpkin orange. Fantastic box. Dracula. Now, I'm not a mint in box collector. I love to have the box because of the graphics like this on it. And as long as it's presentable, I can showcase it. I'm happy. And of course, You know me, I love my patina. These price tags. Dracula. Large, 7 to 8. Family State Easy. You know, I've never heard of that department store chain. I'm going to have to look it up. Or perhaps someone out there in Sanctum land could help me out. 1972. God damn it, that's amazing. Now, this mask would actually make the rounds quite a bit. It would also be sold as a rack mask, and I actually have a copy of the rack mask. And I actually have another version of this that's the rack mask. A little bit different paint job, but look at the nice, bright colors on that. Again, we've got the bat spattered across the face of the character. But now we know this is Dracula. I love the paint job on this. Look at the web work there on the wings, the neon red paint. Then we've got this greenish portion around the eyes. We've got the bat there and the face of the bat. As he's planted his bat derriere right on Dracula's nose. Unless Dracula's just taking dead bats and slapping them on his face, which is kind of grotesque in and of itself. Again, they're trying to they're copying or emulating the Ben Cooper costume because we've got the fangs coming out from below again. More like ogre style or werewolf style fangs. And then he's got this little Van Dyke or this little goatee here to make him appear all the more evil. And of course, a trickle of blood coming down from his mouth, as well as faint outlines of blood along his lip and along his teeth. But this is more to give it sort of that funhouse glow. And check out the paint in the widow's peak here and the hair, the mixes of blue and yellow and green. I always love the detail and paint work on these masks. They really are works of art. So this is a little bit different vinyl. It's not as soft as some of those earlier ones, but it's still not as hard plastic as would come in later years. I guess they did use these well into the 70s, which is different because you do see some costumes without that black string, even in the 60s. He's definitely a funky looking Dracula. More of a Svengali looking guy. Svengali. Actually, Vincent, this might be you if you were Dracula.
People say that I never actually played Dracula. I did play a vampire in the Monster Club. But I did play Dracula in a little film called Vincent Price's Dracula from 1982. IMDb it, as the kids say. Skibbity.
And we've got the full rayon smock here. And I have seen this before. I love this design on this. Look at that Dracula. Almost looks more satanic or devil-like. He's got a mustache and a Van Dyke there. Pointed ears. This is really cool. This is why I love some of the knockoff ones. I mean, you've got on Collegeville and Ben Cooper, you've got the standard artists that worked there. But I always wonder who did the artwork on some of these knockoff costumes, if you will. And actually, this Dracula is not too far off from how he's depicted in Bram Stoker's novel. And there it is, spread out a little bit. Yes, this is an awesome smock. I am definitely calling this the Vincent Price Dracula. You heard it here, folks, on the Sanctum. We are officially christening this particular costume, the Bland Sharnus Dracula, as the Vincent Price Dracula.
Is this what's happening now? You're naming some knockoff costume after me and I'm supposed to be happy? Well, it does look a little like me. Big full eyes, large nose, penciled-in mustache, beautiful full head of hair. I could have played a wondrous Dracula in my youth. Children of the night, what music they make! Put the little pillbug in its tomb. Thank you, Todd Browning.
Now I have another mask of this similar style. This is more of a rack mask. Like I said, these were also sold as rack masks. And here it is here. Again, the Vincent Price. Almost in a little bit better condition than that one. That one's got sort of a wider face. This one's a bit more gaunt. Paint job's a little bit better on this one. But similar stuff. This one's got more cracks on it, more bends and cracks. But again, the artists and designers really seem to go with this bat design. And I don't know if that's the influence of Batman or just the fact that they thought that bats meant Halloween. These bats are almost offensive. Almost offensive. Like the bat is just, you know, I'm not even gonna go with what I'm thinking now with what's dangling down on Dracula's upper lip there. But you can see the two here. More of a squat Vincent. Probably Vincent when he was in his cups. And Vincent when he was a little bit older. More of a gaunt Vincent.
Jody, you can wear one of these and you can pretend to be me. We can fool Dr. Durant. And then I'll make my escape into the afterlife. Oh, God, Jesus, please get me out of here.
Now here is another Dracula. Again, I say I get these things sort of piecemeal. This one has the mask and the smock, but no box. So I like to be a completist. I like to get them together, but sometimes you just have to buy these things when you can. And this one is an extra special piece to me. Not only because it's a super cool Dracula, and it is a Halco Dracula from the 70s, and I am a big fan of the Halco costumes. What am I saying? I'm a big fan of all costumes. Ben Cooper, Collegeville, Halco, Blancharness, etc., etc., etc. But this one is extra special to me because one of my friends in the Sanctum picked this up for me. A member of the Sanctum, a friend of mine that I chat with quite a bit, big monster kid, big collector. He goes by the handle of Big Head Han. He's on Instagram and we chat back and forth. And this guy is always out looking for monster stuff. And he's always out looking out for other monster kids. And one day he's in an antique shop and he sends me this picture and he says, "Hey, I just ran across this piece. Have you ever seen this before?" And I said, "Would you please get that for me?" I said, "Find out how much it cost and would you please get that for me?" And he picked it up for me, no problem. I sent him the money. He sent it to me along with some beautiful artwork. I want to do a shout out to him. He is creating a very cool werewolf style comic book. It's more in a comical vein, a la the Groovy Ghoulies or Drac Pack. And he has shown me some of the initial artwork. If he allows me, I will do an episode later on showing some of that artwork, but I don't want to show any of his artwork without his permission, of course. But when that comes out, you Sanctum fans and you monster fans need to pick it up. But anyhow, he picked this costume up for me, and I couldn't be happier because it is in great condition, albeit it doesn't have a box. And again, what we're looking at here is some of that beautiful neon funhouse paint, I call it. And we've got a ghoulish green Dracula here. Fangs protruding from the mouth, and these fangs are covered in blood. And he's got the blood red lips there. He's got the blood around his eyes. Very ghoulish paint job here, making him appear very monstrous. He's even got a bloody wart on his nose or a popped pimple. I love his eyebrows here, those creepy eyebrows. And I love just the paint scheme, the paint colors. Again, that bluish black mixed together on the Widow's Peak. And he's got sort of, I guess you'd call them pointed ears here or big ears. Mask is in fantastic shape. Still has its regular form. not a crack on it that I see. A little bit later, I'm saying this is probably early 70s, even though it has sort of the yarn or rope rubber band. And the smock itself is made kind of like a rayon, but like a crepe paper style material. And wait till you see this insane Dracula. This is Halloween Dad Dracula, I like to say. This is the fellow that picked up the moray eel deep costume for his son to wear on Halloween. And he's got one eye sort of drooping down and the other like Dracula had a stroke. Halloween Dad, he's been out drinking. Halloween Dad's late for trick-or-treating. He didn't get to the store on time, so someone is gonna be crying 'cause Halloween Dad always brings the wrong costumes home. Halloween Dad. Daddy's back. I made it just in the nick of time. Store was closing. I grabbed this one from the shelf. The man in the store said it's real popular this year. That's why he restocked before closing. He had a ton of these. Come on, put it on. Check it out. Look. Guess who it is? Jack Kerouac. What? What's that? No, it's not Jack. It's Dracula. This is Dracula. You want to be Dracula the vampire, right? This is Dracula. Look at him. Maybe he doesn't look like Bela Lugosi. Who's Bela Lugosi? The box says Dracula. What do you mean he's scary? Scary's good, right? It's Halloween, he's a monster, he's a vampire. Oh, not scary good, but scary like the men that hang out by the convenience store? Come on. It's getting dark. Kids are already out there on the street trick-or-treating. Let's go, let's go. Gotta move on. Now, come on, let's go trick-or-treating. Come on, let's go get you some NECA wafers. Put it on. It's Daddy's weekend, and you're going trick-or-treating. Look, you wanted to be a monster for Halloween, and I got you this Dracula costume. We can drag out your old eel from the deep if you want that. What do you want? Stop crying. Okay, we've had our fun, but I have to admit, this smock is awesome because of this insane artwork on it. I don't know who the artist is that drew this picture, but clearly he was struggling with some issues. You've got a Dracula here with a sort of pseudo just 60s, 70s guy hairdo. He's hanging around in what appears to be like a river of blood. We've got the collar of his cape there, the thing he's in. He's got this necklace around his neck that is a bloody dagger. For some reason, he has a 5 o'clock shadow. He's grinning with his fangs bared. And the most insane thing about this is his eyes. His bloodshot eyes with the huge bags under them. And then there's this Frankenstein-like scar on his forehead. Almost as if the person drawing this wasn't quite sure what he was supposed to be drawing. Am I doing Frankenstein? Am I doing Dracula? Am I drawing a picture of my father? But it's amazing. You've got the moon coming up over the horizon line back there. You've got these two trees silhouetted against it. Dracula on this field of blood coming towards us. And when you slap the mask on this costume, the mask itself is amazing. It just all comes together as a beautiful piece of 70s monster goodness.
I can't feel my face.
Now, this is a Dracula I had never seen before. Now, judging by this box, this is definitely a 1970s costume, I would guess. It's a very large box, which is a surprise, because they were going for, this is a super safe costume. Now, you're going to see something interesting in this when we open it up, but let's take a look at what the box says itself. We've got this goofy clown slash scarecrow on the box. It's a big white box. It's like you're getting a deluxe costume. And it says, Reflecto Big Eye. Sounds like someone figured out your nickname. Got that great Ben Cooper font right there. Reflects light in the dark. Reflects light in the dark. Halloween costume with full vision fun mask. You can see you've definitely got full vision there. They give us super big round eyes, which isn't too far off from the old Dracula costume. Bands on sleeves reflect light in the dark. Dracula, large, 12 to 14. And, of course, we've got this beautiful patina. I know he's going to talk about patina. Patina. $2 price tag there. It was sold at Two Guys. Seasonal price of $2.66. They must have reduced it to $2. And there you've got it again, the price tag from Two Guys. Two Guys were not a department store or a store around where I grew up, so those of you that know what it is or are in the know as to what a Two Guys store is, almost looks like a True Value sticker to me. Let me know. Box is more of a generic costume box. It's not very Halloween-y. It's got the Ben Cooper safety seal over there. And then you've got this guy, the Pied Piper of Fun, or whoever the hell he is, saying that the bands on the sleeves reflect light in the dark. See that on the shelves? Bright white. You go right towards it. It's a fun box. Not my favorite. Open her up here. Pull out the mask. Now, this is clearly a cool Dracula mask. This looks much more like Dracula. You actually have fangs this time around. And yes, we have big, clear eyes there so that vision is not a problem. He's got these pointed ears, these cool sideburns. Again, the Widow's Peak. This is almost similar to, looks like they were kind of doing part of the Dark Shadows Barnabas Collins vampire, especially with the neon around the lips, which they don't really have in the older versions of Dracula. And again, he's got some crud on his teeth there. I guess he didn't brush. There's some yellowish highlights in here, which is kind of interesting, all throughout his laugh lines, if you will, or his scare lines. Big bushy eyebrows. I always love that midnight blue and black in there. This one actually has the rubber band. It's always a surprise when they do, because those things, even when I had these as a kid, they snap right off. Now, I'm not entirely sure this is the smock that goes with this costume. You know what? I guess it is. It is the costume that goes with this, because there's the Reflecto armbands. That's the reflectable material on the arms. Gives it sort of a exotic look. Very different smock. Reflecto there. It's pretty worse for wear here. It's a little crunchy, as they say. And look at that Dracula. That is the Dracula of the mask that we're looking at. So yeah, it is the smock. For the longest time, I kind of thought that it wasn't. I thought it might have gone to a different Dracula costume. So this is definitely a very interesting combination here. Almost looks like they combined a Spider-Man style costume here, because you got this spider web. And again, I think they're doing this for safety purposes. They're making the costume yellow. The pants, if you notice, well, they used to be kind of a greenish color. But I like that. I always like my vampires to have a little greenish tinge to them, making them look a little ghoulish. Now, one trend I'm noticing here in the 70s vampire Dracula costumes is making Dracula or the vampires green, this ghoulish green color, which I really dig. So I appreciate that here, and I really, really dig this artwork on the smock here. I love that face of Dracula. Again, that is pure Monster Kid goodness right there. You have to remember that back in the day, some guy drew this by hand. He designed this. Who knows? He may have thought nothing of it and just said, whatever, and thrown it on there. Not sure if this is a Frank Romano piece. It could be. He did design a lot of pieces for Ben Cooper back in the day, but there were other artists as well. He wasn't the only one, but he was probably one of the ones that worked there the longest and is most well known that we know by name. Speaking of names, one thing I'm noticing here is that Dracula's name is not actually on the smock, which is unusual for a Ben Cooper piece. Trick or treat! And who are you supposed to be? Dracula? How come the name of your character isn't on your smock? Usually the names are right there telling me who you are. As far as I'm concerned, you're just some generic vampire. Let me find the candy bowl here. I usually don't do this. The wife usually does this. Barbara, where's the candy? What's this? How many different types of Snickers do we need? There's Snickers, peanut butter Snickers, almond Snickers, and Snickers with green nougat. Isn't a Snickers bar just a Snickers bar? Why all these variations? What is this? Fun size? Here, Barbara. Barbara, look at me. Look at this. I got your fun size right here. You want fun size or do you want the whole bar? Go to the garage. There's a case of NECA wafers in there. Those things last forever. We're giving those out tonight. Hang on a second, kid. Just a minute. I'll get you some good stuff. By the way, there was another Dracula here earlier. Greenface. His Dracula didn't have the name on the smock either. Whew, that thing was in rough shape. Got him? Barbara, come here. Look at this guy. Oh, God, what are you? Oh, you look like you're a scary wide-eyed... Are you Marty Feldman? Oh, the guy from Young Frankenstein. He's Dracula. Dracula? His name isn't on the smock. I don't think he looks like Dracula. Barbara, leave the boy alone. Give him some NECA wafers and let him be on his way. Happy Halloween! Ah, NECA wafers. Now these truly suck. Now here's another Ben Cooper Dracula. This one's from the 70s, and this was sold as a rack mask, although I'm sure there's a costume that went along with it. I just haven't found it yet. Came across this in a lot a while ago. I actually bought it from the guy that owned it. There was a couple of costumes that he had saved that he had had since he was a kid, and he moved to the area, and his mom had said that she was cleaning out the basement and asked him if he wanted his old costumes. He said yes. He wound up putting them up for sale, and I scooped them up. Now, I refer to this Dracula as the Richard Nixon Dracula because of the large nose and the Nixon-like face there. I am not a creature of the night. I don't know what happened at Borgo Pass. I don't drink wine. I prefer a seltzer water and some cottage cheese with a slice of pineapple. Pat calls it my Hawaiian burger. And this is a fantastic 70s Cooper rack mask. Really good condition. I don't know what those speckles are along the bottom there, but we've got a flesh-toned Dracula. I don't know why they gave him the large bulbous nose. I believe this mask was also used as a witch, or it's from the witch vacuform mask, I think, which explains the large nose. Even the eyes themselves, in a way, are very female-like. They're sort of a cat's eye cut with long lashes out below and, pointed brows up there. And then he's got the big bushy brows. And, of course, that great Halloween green, I like to call it, with the neon red. And then check out the detail along his forehead. His laugh lines, if you will. Or his furrowed brow, his worry lines. Oh, so much to worry about when you're in a vampire that lives forever. Where is the earth of my homeland? Why are there armadillos roaming around my bedroom? Now, this piece, of course, has special meaning to me because I bought it from the actual person that owned it, that wore it as a kid. And now I am the keeper or the curator of this piece. Now, this is a Ben Cooper piece from the 70s. They went with this style where they wanted to have rooted hair in a lot of their costumes. I want to be upfront about this. I'm not a big fan of the rooted hair masks. Collegeville did it with all the Universal monsters in the 80s, and I hate it. It looks crazy. I already have a fear of curly-haired men, and now you're making these monsters have curly hair. But they did have some cool masks, and they did have some cool designs on the costumes. This is a cool box. It's the Hairy Scary Costume Box. And you've got the Ben Cooper logo up there in the corner. We've got the child's name on it. And I think we figured out why the kids' names are on these. Because they took these to school to wear for the Halloween parties or Halloween parades at school. And this must have been quite a cool kid indeed. Jennifer Savoy. She said, I'm not going to go as some princess or queen or whatever. I'm going to be Dracula. Good for her. She must have been a monster kid extraordinaire. And if you're out there, kudos to you, Jennifer. And you know we're well into the 70s because the costume is made entirely of that great vinyl. Oh, this one's a little worse for wear. It's torn. The vinyl would rip a lot easier too. But wait till you see this design. That is why I had to get it, because it is an awesome, terrifying Dracula. Ghoulish green, blood spurting from his lips, mouth full of fangs, blood-red eyes, arched eyebrows, and static electricity hair. Really love the color schemes on this. You've got the purple pants there, or the purple leggings. And, of course, you've got the chest piece of the smock is just this spider web with this fantastic ghoulish green Dracula face bursting out with a big giant bat behind it, and the Dracula letters, the Dracula font letters there below in dripping blood. That's one of the things I always appreciated about the Monster Kid stuff we grew up with in the 70s. They weren't afraid to toss a little bit of gore in there. I mean, you've got blood coming out of Dracula's mouth here. You've got his letters made of blood. And again, kudos to you, Jennifer. I would have loved to have been friends with you back in elementary school. Now, I couldn't do a Halloween-themed episode without bringing up these NECA Halloween costume monster figures. Now, people are going gaga over these. The first wave came out during the summertime. It was a pre-order wave, and it sold out immediately. And on the secondary market, some of these characters, especially Frankenstein and Creature from the Black Lagoon, they're being sold for over $100. Then quickly Wave 2 came out, which was a witch along with this vampire, or Dracula, if you will. Now, numerous people have done reviews of these figures, and if you go on YouTube right now, you're going to see hundreds of videos of these. So I didn't really want to do a review of these figures per se. I will speak to them in this episode, and maybe later on down the line I will showcase them. But if you watch some of my older episodes, you'll know that I have already showcased some very amazing Halloween monster figures. And those would be the ones made by Alexander Heftick. He has been doing these for quite a few years. And Brent's Dolls did some as well. And there have been numerous other customizers. If you're on the Mego Museum boards or a member of the Mego Museum, you can go back numerous years and see that people were doing custom figures along the lines of these with a Ben Cooper type style costume for a variety of characters, superheroes, monsters, what have you. Now the plus. I love that these are getting the attention they're getting. I love that they're making people aware of these wonderful costumes or helping people to remember these wonderful costumes. But I think some of us in the costume collecting community, or people that have been collecting costumes for years or studying costume for years, there's always that weird point where you're like, hey, the band that I've liked for years, suddenly everybody else likes them now, or the thing that I've always liked forever, now everybody's jumping on that bandwagon. So there's a little bit of dismay there. I mean, I welcome all people to enjoy what they enjoy and collect things, but it is driving prices up on some collectibles in the back market because people aren't aware of the prices of these things, so they're overpaying for a lot of these costumes, or bidding high on these costumes because they want to have the costumes that match these figures. And just to give everyone a little history here, Ben Cooper and Collegeville both went out of business in the 1990s, and they were both absorbed by Ruby's costumes. And for a while, they may have been released with a Ben Cooper trademark or a Collegeville trademark down the line, but eventually they all switched over to Ruby's. A few years back, you'll remember that Target and a few other stores Target and Spirit Halloween had a few Ben Cooper commemorative costumes, anniversary costumes. Those were released by Ruby's, and they did all right, I guess, but nothing spectacular. NECA must have been paying attention to what was going on in the custom community and seen some of Alexander Heftick's work, I have no doubt, because his stuff was posted all over the place, and probably thought, hey, it's a good idea that we should do some of these. And NECA, as I found out, owns Ruby's costume, so they have access to all of the designs and IPs for some of these properties. So let's talk pluses first. NECA nailed it with the packaging. They went for one of my all-time favorite monster boxes, and that is the Midnight Blue Full Moon Monster Box, which I talked about numerous episodes past, and anybody that has talked about Ben Cooper monsters, 90% of them, this is their favorite monster box. And of course, we've got the heads illustrations of all the major monsters here, except for, surprisingly enough, Dracula. We've got the Wolfman, we've got Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and of course the Mummy. Mummy even gets his hand out there, his bloody hand. Got the Ben Cooper logo there. Nice window box. Oh, you do have the creature's hand on there. I apologize. The creature's got his hand. And it's designed exactly like that 1973 monster box. Great graphics. Here's the line on the back of some of the others they've made. Creature from the Black Lagoon, Devil, Frankenstein, Mummy, Phantom, Dracula, another Devil, Skeleton, Vampire Girl, and Witch. Collect them all. And you can clearly see right here that it says Ben Cooper, which is a trademark of Ruby's. And then you've got NECA there. And here we've got the information. And there we've got the credits. And then you've got the credits right here. Looks like the sculptor on this was Tony Cipriano. Oh, interesting looking Dracula. It's pretty cool looking, right? And he's in a Ben Cooper box, and they're saying that he is a Ben Cooper Dracula. But that mask there is the Monster Squad Dracula mask from Collegeville. So it only aggravates me to the point that I'm an anal retentive collector, I guess, if you'll say, in that they have a Collegeville mask on a Ben Cooper smock. Now, that smock we've seen in prior episodes, and we're going to see it again here tonight. That is the Ben Cooper smock. It's artwork by the amazing Frank Romano. I do like the accessories they give him here. They give him a little plastic trick-or-treat pumpkin, and you've got some stuff going on in the back there for, in the card insert to set up your own sort of diorama or display. But the reason I'm kind of aggravated is, as I said up front at the beginning of this episode, Collegeville and Halco were making costumes well before Ben Cooper. They're all great. I love them all. But Ben Cooper seems to get all the accolades, and Collegeville is often left behind. People like us remember it, and kids from that era remember it, but whenever anybody talks about vintage costumes, the only name they mention is Ben Cooper. And I just feel that that's not fair. And so to see a fantastic figure like this with a Collegeville mask on a Ben Cooper costume just irritates me too, just a tiny, tiny bit. Got him out of his packaging there so we can get a little better look at him. This tiny Dracula. Tiny Dracula, hold me closer. Tiny Dracula, don't suck my blood. Do. Dear God, man. Now he's doing Elton John. And I like this. This is pretty cool. Good idea. You've got the Ben Cooper costume shop, like an old 5 and dime brick and mortar store where they're selling the monster masks there. That's cool. That's a very Monster Kid aesthetic. I really love it. Let's take him out. It's always a pain to get these things off. Blah blah. I want to trick or treat. So it's actually very cool. It does look quite a bit like the Monster Squad Dracula mask. Now what's interesting here is you can see the kid's eyes behind the mask. Kind of like Margaret Keane, the big eye. That mid-century modern wide-eyed kid's artwork to it. So that's kind of interesting. Costume itself is definitely seems to be a type of vinyl or pleather. Almost more like a pleather, actually. I like the smock. It does capture the Dracula smock well. He's got his little sneakers on here. The design's not bad. He's got some articulation points. He can bend at the knees. Again, I think what they used was they used the bodies from the Halloween 3 Trick or Treat kids. His head moves around a lot. And, they do the thing so that it looks like the rubber band's on his head, except now it's tied behind his head like a string, which was not the case. These were rubber bands, but that's fine. They're just adding taking a little artistic license there. Now, but you've got him there. This is their version of the Ben Cooper 70s Dracula. Now, here is the original smock that goes with that Dracula costume. Looks pretty much like what we've got there. I'm going to hang it up behind us so we can take a look at it. But I love this smock, and I've showcased it in my Ben Cooper Monsters episode, and I believe it's showcased in another episode as well, so you can check it out there. I always like this one because it's a very Christopher Lee style Dracula. Again, the great Frank Romano, rest in peace. Now that is the original Ben Cooper Dracula smock, and it looks very much like the smock that NECA put on their Ben Cooper Dracula figure. This, however, is the mask for the Ben Cooper Dracula costume, and it's just as cool as the Monster Squad mask. I mean, I think I would have preferred to see a Monster Squad Dracula with the Monster Squad costume, which itself isn't that bad and is pretty cool. And as a matter of fact, Collegeville would reuse that mask numerous times throughout the years on a variety of Dracula costumes, quite often calling it the Dracula from Monster Squad, but I believe in one of the Canadian variants, it is just known as Dracula. But this is the Ben Cooper mask, and it's pretty cool. It's got lots of blood dripping down from the mouth, big fangs, a pale white face, awesome silver black widow's peak, and of course that green highlighter on the eyes, kind of almost like a Godzilla paint job up around the eyes between the eye and the eyebrows there. Now you can see we've got the Ben Cooper Dracula here and the NECA Ben Cooper Dracula with the Collegeville mask. They both got pale pasty faces. This one's probably more of a traditional cartoonish Dracula, especially because they're copying the Monster Squad, and this one is more of a terrifying Dracula with lots of blood dripping down from his mouth. I don't know, maybe the blood turned them off. I don't know why they didn't want to go with the mask that actually matches this smock, But like I said, Alexander Heftig has been making these for years, and he made a Ben Cooper Dracula costume, and I happen to own it. I also happen to provide him with pictures of my Ben Cooper Dracula so he could make it. And this is his here. And this is quite different. Same smock, but his are done more in the style of an 8-inch Mego figure. But actually what he's doing is he's doing kind of the Lincoln monsters. So you've got a combination of an old school monster figure here combined with an old school Halloween costume. And that's the sweet spot for me. That's what makes this really cool. If you want the child in the costume, that's fine. I kind of like this because it's very Monster Kid to me. Those are actual Lincoln Monster hands. Not real ones, but they were taken from Lincoln Monster molds, I believe. He makes each of these individually. These are molded, sculpted, put together. Costume's beautiful. They've got shoes. You can see how they're kind of put together here. Nice articulation. Hand painted, I believe. And he's got the authentic Dracula mask that goes with the Ben Cooper costume. And he does the same thing. You've got the kid's head there. The mask doesn't come off. I think that's the thing that most people have asked to have on these figures, is for somebody to do a removable vacuum form mask. I don't know how that could be done. I don't mind it this way because I don't have to worry about losing the piece. It sets the purpose. I don't need to see the kid's face behind it. Now, you don't see any eyes behind the mask there. He just gives it sort of the black eyes, which I am fine with. And if you want to compare the two here, there's nothing wrong with the NECA one. Certainly not. And for the price point, it's fine. It's great. Alexander's are different works of art. Like I said, they're on a whole other level. And he goes for a bit more authenticity. And like I said, I kind of like his because he's mixing and melding old school monster toys with old school monster costumes. I've got quite a few of his figures. I've showcased him in prior episodes, and I'll showcase him in the future. But there you have it. The Alexander and the NECA. At the beginning of this episode, I said that these vampires weren't romantic. These were horrific vampires. These were actual monsters. And that there was nothing lovable about them. But I was wrong. There is something lovable about these monsters. They were loved by the kids that bought these costumes. They were loved by the kids that wore these masks. They were loved by the kid that ran up and down the street trick-or-treating, thinking for one night he actually was Dracula. I said earlier that in my opinion Dracula was the least sympathetic of these monsters. I may have been a tad wrong. Dracula is a man that has lived forever. He is living outside of his own time. He is yearning for a past that, for better or worse, no longer exists. Perhaps as a kid I couldn't empathize with Dracula, but as an adult, I can kind of see where he's coming from. I'll say to you as I say every Halloween, I hope you chose the right box and enjoy being who you chose to be. May you have 100 Halloweens more. Stay cool, stay kind, and walk in beauty, my friends. Oh, and happy Halloween.
Guess who? Trick or treat! Wouldn't be an episode without old Gwent now, would it? Time to show these vampiric bastards how we do things here in Amity. Come on, I'll drive this harpoon through your undead hearts. Happy Halloween, you fanged. Oh, where'd you come from? Not today. Quint don't die on Halloween. Choke on these NECA wafers, you son of a bitch. I am out of here. Slippery boat shoes, don't fail me now. Like I said, I don't die on Halloween.